Hello, my name is Crystal Petry, and you are watching season 3 of the Crystal Petry Podcast. On today's episode, we are going to learn all about how to become an entrepreneur. According to the numbers, more people than ever are stepping out of the traditional jobs and starting their own thing. So, we're going to learn about that, but we're also going to learn how to prioritize you as the CEO, as the founder in the business venture. And here to educate me and you, we have Ral West. So, welcome to the podcast, Ral. How are you?
I'm doing great, Crystal. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So, where in the world are you?
I am in Sitka, Alaska.
What?
Yeah, it's a small town in southeast Alaska. A lot of cruise ships visit here.
Oh my goodness. I've never, number one, I've never been to Alaska. And number two, I've never had anyone on my platform from Alaska. You're the first.
Yeah, well, got to
So
be the first.
congratulations.
Yeah. But there just aren't many Alaskans. There's fewer than a million of us. So it could be
This
why.
is true. And I'm lucky enough to have one of the few on my platform. So, Rao, as we get into this podcast and get into this discussion, kind of tell me and my audience, how did you get into what it is that you're doing as far as helping entrepreneurs and helping them to prioritize themselves?
Okay, well, um, I've been an entrepreneur for like 44 years. And I have a few businesses that we continue to run. We don't really want to retire completely, and I was not looking for a new job or a new business, but my daughters suggested that I teach people how to do what we have done, which is to be able to run all these businesses and still live the life of our dreams. And they said, Mom, everybody wants to be like you and have your life. In fact, we've been asked many times, would you adopt me? Adults asking us. And so I thought, I'm not sure if that's what I want to do, becoming a personal brand, really putting myself out there. I don't know. But I quickly discovered that I really have a passion, not only for teaching, but for entrepreneurship and for business. It's one of my loves. So why not? So I'm just, learning new things all the time because this is a whole new ball game in terms of the type of business. Never done this kind of business before.
Yeah.
And I've been at it for about 2 years now. And it's been fun. And as I said, a steep learning curve, particularly with technology, using all of these different tools, getting a microphone and a light and all these things.
Yes.
And I created an online course because we have this life of our dreams. I don't have a lot of time to do one-on-one
Mhm.
consultations with people because we're always traveling. We're in between a couple of trips right now. And so I thought, okay, I need to do one-to-many and use leverage, which is one of the principles that I teach. And so I did this online course, and it took me about a year to create it, and it's all done now. And then it's like, okay, now I need to create a mastermind because some of the people taking the course are not being very disciplined about going through the modules of the course on their own.
Mhm.
I say, this is for you. Here's all the modules. You can take them whenever you want because they're videos, and there are 8 modules and about 4 or 5 videos per module. And they get through about, the first maybe 2 or 3 modules and then just kind of stop. So, okay, we need a different approach here. We're going to do a mastermind where I walk you through the modules and spend a year, going through all of the contents of the course, and also, of course, getting feedback and coaching from me along the way in a small group setting, no more than 25 people. And
Mhm.
we'll have a once a month group meeting, and then there'll be a community, an online community where people can ask questions and get feedback and maybe get a kick in the butt when they need it, and keep everybody going. Because I do truly believe that if a business owner uses these 6 principles, they will have a much more successful business
Mhm.
and happier life, a lot more freedom for themselves and their
And I
family.
feel like that's what everyone, that's your desire. Whether you're in a traditional,
Mhm.
especially if you step out into the entrepreneurship waters, it's more freedom for your life. For my community,
Yeah.
Ral, give us your definition of an entrepreneur.
Well, an entrepreneur is someone who starts a business or possibly buys a business,
Okay.
and it's your business. You own at least a majority of the shares of that business, and you're running it. And the people that I'm focused on for my course and my mastermind are owner operators, where they're really, up to their elbows or eyeballs in running the business day to
Mhm.
day. And that's what I'm trying to fix, is
What?
trying to get
What?
them to be able to step back a bit. They can still be an entrepreneur. Another aspect of a definition of entrepreneurialism is the
Mhm.
willingness to take risks, and certainly
Right.
putting your future in your own hands, and your livelihood
Talk
is a
about a
risk.
risk.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
so entrepreneurs are a special breed, and I love them. I love being one. As I said, I've been one for over 44 years, and I don't intend
What
to stop.
myths, Rao, do you feel like people need to unlearn
Oh,
about entrepreneurship before they even take that step?
well, there's many. Uh, Probably one of the biggest is, you have to work really hard, and you
Mhm.
have to do everything yourself. You've got to get in there and, figure it all out for yourself. And I think that's a myth, because you don't have to do anything all by yourself. You can have a team, you can have mentors, you can have other people supporting you. They don't have to be employees at all.
Mhm.
Especially nowadays, it's so easy to get a virtual assistant or a fractional CFO or a fractional marketing, person, a CMO. And there's many ways to be able to leverage other people's talents and time to help you build your business. And you are not going to know it all. That's a myth. You just don't know it all. You may, if you're a plumber and you decide to open your own, plumbing service business, you may be a fantastic plumber and know everything about, the pipes and the
Mhm.
plumbing stuff. But that doesn't mean you know how to run a business. And
That's
so
true. That's true.
that's the other thing, is that just knowing your craft is not enough to make you a successful business person. You have to be able to understand human resources and marketing and finance and a lot of things that a plumber is not going to know as he's doing his or her work.
Mhm.
And so I think it's important to be able to get a grasp on all of these other aspects of running a business. And one of the tools that I found, or was actually handed to me early on
Mhm.
by one of our mentors, Robert Kiyosaki, he said, get this book. It's called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. It's still in print. He's still producing updates for this book. But if you're an entrepreneur, it's like a Bible. You have to read this book, and it spells out for you all the different aspects of being an entrepreneur and all the different roles that need to be filled, whether you're filling them yourself and
Mhm.
wearing multiple hats, or whether you have other people that you're going to put a marketing hat on so and so, and a finance hat on someone, and so on. So this is a great book. It's not a big, difficult book to read. So
Mhm.
just get it and read it and then do it.
I love that. Very, very specific, Ms. West. Very specific. How does someone know? Because whenever you become an entrepreneur, whenever you step into those waters, you are feeling a need or a gap somewhere. How do you know which gap, which need your business is supposed to fill?
Well, I think you start with a hunch that, oh, I think people need XYZ service.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to then do some research and make sure that it's more than a hunch, so that you're not risking your whole livelihood on something that might not really be there. So you need to do a little bit of research and find out well, are there other businesses offering this same service?
Mhm.
Where's the market? Maybe reach out to some people and say, if I offered this service, would you want to buy it? And what would you be willing to pay for it? And I think that a lot of people just jump into their business without doing that research. I know I did. And to
Yeah,
begin
a
with.
lot of people listening did too.
And so it'd be better, like if I had known then what I know now, I would have done a little bit more research to find out what exactly the need is. Just do some surveys, and gosh,
Mhm.
there's survey tools online, mega survey tools. Or you could go on LinkedIn and do a little survey there and say, is anybody interested in having this service done for you? And find out. And then you can go from there. And even if you get a good response and you get, good results from your survey, you are still going to need to evolve. Your product will evolve. Your services will evolve. What you think is going to be it at the beginning generally ends up being a little different down the road. So you have to be
Absolutely.
willing to be flexible and, mold your business and your products to what the actual needs are of your customers.
Okay, so
Respond to the market,
okay, so Ral, we have our idea. We've done
Mhm.
our research. We know what need or gap we need to fill. What is the next step to take our idea from an idea to action?
That's it. Take action. I mean, don't just
Okay.
sit there. Don't just sit there and think about it.
Mhm.
Too many people do that. I've run into so many people that they looked at us and the business that we created and went, yeah, that's a great business. We thought about doing that. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, well,
Yeah.
what stopped you? So
Right.
you need to
Right.
you need to just jump in. And the first action might be, well, figuring out where you're going to have your office. Is it going to be at home? Do you need to rent a space? Do you need a storefront? What do you need in terms of your physical location? How are you going to serve your customers? What kind of phone system do you need? And
Mm.
in the olden days, you needed some kind of landline and buttons for each line. And now you can just get that all automated and online. It doesn't have to be that complicated. So there's many things that you need to figure out. And how are your customers going to find you? How are you going to market your business? Decide that.
Mhm.
Get the name of your business and create a logo. And again, that's easy today. You can go on Canva or any of the several other kind of online design tools to create your own logo. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars to have a
Right.
cool looking logo for your business. And then just get yourself out there. Start talking to people. Start promoting yourself. Get a client, get some money coming in the door.
Yes. So, Ral, you stated that you've been an entrepreneur for over 40 years. You've been in the coaching space for the last couple years. What advice would you give you in your expert opinion? What advice would you give someone that is thinking about becoming an entrepreneur? They have this great idea, they want to do it. What advice would you give them to encourage them to go ahead and take action?
I think it's important to understand your finances.
Hmm.
And there is, you asked earlier about myths, and maybe one of the myths is that, oh yeah, you can start making money right away. And sometimes it doesn't happen right away. Maybe you're lucky and it does, but oftentimes a business takes a while to generate a profit. And that's what you're going to be living on, is the profit, not the gross revenues. That
Right.
was a lesson I learned early on too, is that I was just always looking at the top line.
Hmm.
I wasn't paying attention to the bottom line, and I was wondering why I couldn't pay my bills. So I figured out I needed to focus elsewhere.
Hopefully, you
So
figured out before they turned off your bills.
oh, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
But I think that the advice that I would give to myself if I was starting over again, or anyone else, is to have an idea as to your, piggy bank, if you will. What are your resources that are going to support you? And if you're a breadwinner for your family, support your family, and for how long? And make sure that you've got that covered so that it doesn't put too much pressure on you to start producing that profit right away. Give yourself at least a year, a couple years, depending on the business. Maybe it takes 3 to 5 years to really start generating some money, but profitable money. But again, you don't want to give up. So if the more you have your resources lined up, the better able you're going to be able to stay in your business and keep working it until it reaches that point of being a real profitable success.
Do
And
you think?
go ahead.
Oh, okay. Do you think, as I'm listening to you, talk about finances and having that, set aside, do you think that people should create sort of like an emergency fund? Not necessarily an emergency fund, but like some kind of fund just set aside to help you with your bills and your utilities. And, if you have someone to pay, maybe pay yourself, start building that nest egg for when you do become an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. I think everybody needs that anyway. The world is not a certain place, and it hasn't been, and it's becoming less so. So I
True.
think everybody needs to have, sometimes they say 6 months, but, better to have a year of living expenses set aside so that you have that cushion in case you lose your job, or something happens, we have another COVID or something.
Mhm.
You need to have some resources to fall back on so that you don't have to go into debt in order to live.
Right.
That's expensive to go into debt, so I don't recommend it.
Right. And you can also use some of that money to, help you until you have continuous repeat clients in your business. You can
Right.
also use that as well for that. So let's talk about, once we have our idea, we've done our research, we've moved into the action phase, we're building, we're managing. How does someone balance passion? You have this fierce passion for this company you have created. How do you balance that with profit?
Okay. That's the $1 million question, isn't it? So the most important thing
Mhm.
is build the business to support the lifestyle that you want.
Okay.
You have to have a clear picture of what's important to you, and that's going to be different for each person. And is time for yourself, time for your family really important to you? Is it the money that's the most important? What is it that you really want to focus on, and then build your business to support that. And a lot of entrepreneurs go into it thinking, oh, I have to work my fingers to the bone to get
Mhm.
this up and running. And they do, and they get exhausted. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have to work hard to be an entrepreneur and to start out. Sometimes you do have to put in some long hours and work really hard. But then take the time out every once in a while to recharge. If you don't do that, you are going to just get to the point of burnout and exhaustion, and then you're no good to anyone, yourself, your family, your customers, your team.
Mhm.
So you have to decide upon your balance and your how you divide your time from the get-go, and don't sacrifice yourself for the business. And I
Right.
think too many people do that, and they end up hating their business and feeling like they're a slave to their business, and it doesn't have to be that way. So here's another point, is that when you're starting out and maybe you don't have that steady stream of income,
Mhm.
but you still need, to feed the family, kind of thing, pay the rent or your mortgage or whatever.
Yes.
So maybe you start your business as a side gig first,
Great
to
idea.
get some clients and get some income going, and then you gradually work your way out of your W-2 job or whatever else it is that you're doing. So there's a mixture of taking a risk and having security. So you don't want to just do all or nothing. You can have a mix. And I
That's
think
a
that
great
that's
idea.
something that people don't realize, that, oh, yeah, you get to be the designer, you get to be the artist that drafts the life that you want. And maybe it does take you a few years until you get to the point where, "Oh, I think I can quit my job now, because I
Mhm.
think I've got it up and running, and I've got enough customers. I have a good feel for what it's going to take to keep this business running. Now I have the confidence and the resources to be able to go in full bore, 100%.
How long do you think, as far as having the side gig, how long should you, and I'm thinking about this question as I'm asking it out loud, how long should you look and say, okay, I've had repeat clients, I've had steady income for 2 months, for 3 months, before you say, now is the time for me to quit my traditional W-2 job? And I'm sure it's different for everyone.
Yes.
That's a really open question, but just
Yeah.
kind of guesstimating here. How long do you think?
It so much depends on the individual and what they're doing and what kind of network they have to create a demand for their product. If they're in a business where they are well known and
Mm-hmm.
they're stepping out on their own and maybe doing something that they've been doing in their W-2 job, but now they're doing it under their own uh, label, then it's going to be a lot faster than someone who's starting off in a new industry, something that they don't have any connections or contacts or a built-in network. So that would vary quite a bit. Some people can do it in a few months. Other people, it will take a few years.
Right,
So it
right,
kind of depends on the person and the situation. So I'm sorry, but there's no
right. I just thought I'd
answer
throw
to
that
that.
question out there because it
Yeah.
popped into my head as we are having this conversation. What tools can you advise for people to use to help with organization, to help maybe with their finances, to help
Oh,
with maybe, customer retention and things like that? Any specific tools that you can advise on?
oh, yeah. Well, take my course for one thing, because that'll give you all the tools.
Shameless plug, Miss West, and I love it.
That it's true. I outline all the things that you need to have because it's a different tool depending on the task, obviously.
Mhm.
And so keeping yourself organized, I use one tool that I've been using for over 10 years, and it's called OmniFocus, and it's a task management app. And it syncs across all my platforms. So I have the same app, the same information on my phone, my iPad, my laptop, my desktop, so I know what's going on at all times. I don't know how I would operate without it. I jokingly say that it's my brain,
Mhm.
and it keeps track of all of my personal tasks as well as business tasks. It keeps track of birthdays and when the taxes are due and everything, medical appointments, you name it. So you have to have some way to
Mhm.
organize your tasks. And there are productivity apps. I've done research. There are just countless productivity apps. And then there are task management apps. And then there are apps that are just to-do lists or reminders. So some of them are just really, really simple and basic, and others get quite complicated. There's tasks like Asana and Trello and Slack that help you keep a team organized. Um,
Mm.
just many, 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 and just go onto your trusty search engine or
Yes.
ask ChatGPT what's the best app for you and your circumstances. Depends on how big your team is, and you really need to be able to integrate the activities of a lot of different people, or you're just trying to organize yourself. So that
Mhm.
and there's cost variations. Some of them are free or really cheap, and others are fairly expensive, depending on how complicated you need that product to be. But that's just for your organizing your productivity and your tasks. Then you get into finance, and I highly recommend QuickBooks. And it's been around forever, but there's other newer apps that help you organize your finances as well. I particularly like QuickBooks Online because I have a bookkeeper that's not in the same place that I am. And I have a CPA firm that's in another geographic location. So with QuickBooks Online, anybody can, who has the login credentials and
Mhm.
authorized can log in and do the work and pull the reports and, see what's happening. So you can get finance software that only lives on your one computer that's just on your hard drive, or then there's others that can be housed in the cloud so that anybody can access it, or so that you can access it even if you're not sitting at your computer. So again, it depends on what you want in terms of your complexity of your businesses and how many users you want to have and so forth. And then the cost varies. I think QuickBooks Online is pretty expensive, but maybe compared to what I would have to do if I didn't have it, then it's
That's
cheaper.
true. That's true. You
So,
definitely need to weigh those options there. I feel like, and if I'm wrong, well, please correct me. I feel like any entrepreneur, you're going to make mistakes within that journey, whether that's at the beginning, the middle, the end, there are going to be
always.
mistakes.
I'm
But
still making them.
Can you define the difference between a mistake and a lesson learned?
There is no difference. Every
Okay.
mistake is an opportunity to learn something. And if you don't look at it that way, you're missing the boat. You have an opportunity to get a lesson from every mistake that you make. And I think mistakes are wonderful because they're your
That's a
education.
first. Yeah.
I mean, I used to be horrified when I made a mistake,
Yeah.
way back when. And then I gradually learned, and actually my mentor, Robert Kiyosaki, helped me learn that, these mistakes are learning opportunities. And so I would start to embrace them and say, okay, well, it still doesn't feel good. I mean, let's be honest, it doesn't feel good to make a mistake. But if you can turn it around and say, okay, well, what did I get from this? And what am I going to do differently? How am I going to fix this? How am I going to fix my system so that this mistake doesn't happen? And sometimes the mistakes are made by people on your team.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the things I learned early on is you don't point fingers at that person and blame the person. You first take a look at the system and what about that system created the opportunity for them to make that mistake, and how can you plug the holes in your system so that that type of mistake is not going to be as likely to happen in the future. So you look first at the rule of thumb is 80% of the time the system is at fault, and only 20% of the time is the person at fault. And if you could count on however many hands the number of times people have just been lambasted for, how could you do this? What a stupid thing. And that's just so negative and so non-productive. So let's take each incident and say, okay, so what happened here? What can we do to improve the system so that this situation can't occur in the future? Do we need some technology? Do we need some backup? What else needs to be in place? And fix it. You don't fix the person, you fix the system.
Excellent. Excellent. How does one build a life? And you started the podcast with this, and I love that you did. How does someone build a life where they are successful as an entrepreneur, but they also are living the life of their dreams on the personal side?
Mm. Well, I can tell you how we did it.
Yes.
And okay, so many decades ago,
Mm-hmm.
we were running our business. We probably had been running the business for 10 or 12 years, and we're up to our eyeballs as mom and pop running the show. We were doing everything. My husband was signing every check. He'd even sweep the sidewalks in front of the
Oh,
the office. And we didn't have much of a life. Our poor little daughter had to come to the office after school to do her homework because we were working until 6 or 7 o'clock at night. And, it was not much of a great family life.
mm-hmm.
And we realized that, this is not great. I mean, we were at the point where we wanted to have a second child, but who had time to, make one? And
Yeah.
so
You love it.
so I was like, okay, something's got to change. And it was about that time that we had this lunch with Robert Kiyosaki, and he said, get the E-Myth. And we did that same day, and we read it. And then we went back to our office and started implementing what that book told us to do. And what it told us was to create systems and to set up your team so that they knew what to do whether you were there or not. So you have to outline the job descriptions and the policies and the procedures and figure all this stuff out so that you could be away from the office for a period of time and not have everything fall apart. And that's one of every entrepreneur's biggest fears, is that if I'm not there, everything will just go to hell.
Exactly.
It's going to just
And there
implode.
goes your freedom.
Absolutely. If you're tied to that business and you can't even go out for lunch, much less take a vacation, that's not right. So you have to be able to itemize what you do. And that's the first task. And many people just say, I don't have time to do that. Well, if you don't have time to do that, then you're never going to have time to get away from the business. You're never going to get freedom. So you have to just, bite the bullet and take the time, make the time. Or to one business person, I suggested, well, you could get an intern and have the intern follow you around and write down what you do.
Oh,
if you don't have time to do it yourself. I mean, there's a way. My mother always said, where there's a will, there's a way. And I believe that there's always an answer. There's no dead ends. So figure it out. But you got to do that. You got to figure out what it is that you do. What are your tasks? What are your decisions? That's the thing that a lot of entrepreneurs don't think about, is that how many decisions are you making every day? And you feel like nobody else can make this decision. And I'll give you an example. We had a pretty large company. I mean, there were like 40, 50 employees. And so we had a marketing team, but I was the head of the marketing team. And I would say, okay, it looks like we need to increase our advertising spending now. And they would look at me and say, how did you know that? And I said, I don't know. I just know. So I realized, okay, that's not good enough. I need to figure it out. I need to figure out, how did I know? What was it that I was looking at that gave me the clues to increase advertising spending? And it took me a while, maybe it was 2 or 3 weeks. I don't remember, but I figured out that I was watching the sales trends. And if the trends were starting to go down, that meant we need to pick up the advertising spending, because in our market, we were getting our clients through television and radio and newspaper advertising. This was back in, the 90s. Yeah. And so that became the rule of thumb. We defined it precisely, which metric we would track. And if that metric was declining for 3 consecutive days, that's the trigger. Increase your advertising. Now I was free to be away from the marketing team, and they could make those decisions without me. I didn't have to be on hand to make sure it all stayed on track. So that's just one example.
Oh my, that was a great example. And you know what? So many people don't want to give up, or they feel like they're giving up power. They feel like they're giving up like stability, job stability, or whatever word you want to throw in there, when they empower other people to make those decisions.
Oh, you're talking about someone's ego, aren't you?
Oh, I guess I am.
Yeah. If you let your ego get in the way of growing the business because you're too important to be replaced, it has to be you. My husband has an expression he learned: your ego is not your amigo, So,
yes.
So yeah, get over that and realize that other people can be taught how to do what you do. And you want to duplicate yourself. That's one of my favorite expressions. Duplicate yourself. Make sure that others can do what you do. That's what will give you the freedom. And if you cling to the idea that it's only you and you alone and you're the anointed one, then kiss your freedom goodbye.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you said that so succinctly. I love it.
Yeah, you have to be, and I have to admit that when we got the business, it took us 5 years to develop all of these systems and create all of the procedures. And at the same time, we were nurturing our team and nurturing our culture. We totally changed our culture about that time. Our culture was not as customer oriented before. And then we realized we had to be incredibly customer focused because our business depended on repeat business. And what our business was that we operated a chartered jet service between Alaska and Hawaii. And we were
Okay.
carrying over 30,000 passengers a year. And,
Wow.
the population in Alaska is relatively small. So, that in order to fill those seats over and over again, the people had to go several times. So we needed that repeat business. And so we changed our culture to be more customer centric, and we focused more on our team and building up our team members and giving them the empowerment and the authority and giving them the guidelines so that they could make decisions on their own. And this allowed us to step away. So about 5 years later, we were able to hire a chief operating officer and a chief financial officer to take what we had grown, and we handed it to them. And then we said, okay, we're off. We went off to Maui. We bought our second home, which we still have. And we started spending more time away from the office. And then they started growing the business even more. And I have to admit, my ego got a little bit out of joint. I went, well, I thought we were doing pretty well. And look at what they're doing. And one of them said to me, well, if you hadn't created the foundation, we couldn't have grown it. And,
wow, that's true.
Thank you.
That's an eye-opener.
Yeah. And that, assuaged my ego. And then I was just proud of what our team was able to create with the tools that we created. And then more tools were created by the team, and they were following the guidelines that we had established, and the culture and the values and the principles that we had poured into the business. They carried on. And then we got to the point where we were doing 8 digits a year in annual revenue. And then we sold the business to Alaska Airlines. So
really,
that's how it works.
What? That is an amazing story. Okay, I have several follow-up questions. My first follow-up question is, did y'all manage to make the second baby?
Yes. And she just got married in January.
Congratulations.
Yeah. They're 10 years apart, so it took a while. But But yeah, we couldn't have done that if we hadn't started doing these systems, because I needed to spend some time away from the office.
Right.
So so that was part of that.
Okay, my second follow-up question is, when you guys started the private jet business from Alaska to Hawaii, in the back of your mind, you or your husband or both, did you ever have the thought that we want to sell this business at some point in time? Or was it just, we started this business, we're just going to keep it and we're going to grow it and do what we can with it?
We knew that there needed to be an exit at some point.
Okay.
And I was raised in a family business, and I was aware of the struggle with succession planning and who takes over the business from the founder and that sort of thing. And we were aware of that there's pitfalls in that, and there's a real art to designing the succession plan. So you have to be able to exit a business at some point, whether through the succession planning, you're handing it off to someone else, whether a family member or one of your team that steps up to take it over. But selling a business always needs to be an option, always. And in our case, it was important that we were willing to sell the business because Alaska Airlines had decided to fly between Alaska and Hawaii. And when I say we were chartering jets, we were not chartering little private jets. We were chartering 767s. We were chartering wide body jets, big ones, 200 or 300 passengers per jet. And we would pay for the entire plane, whether we sold one seat or all of them. It didn't matter. It was the same price. So talk about risk. There was an incredible amount of risk. But we knew that, this was still somewhat of a mom and pop company. We owned 100%, and we were the ones financing the company. So if Alaska Airlines decided that they wanted to come into the Anchorage, Honolulu market, which was our primary market, we knew that it would only be a matter of time before their deeper pockets would win. And in the meantime, we'd lose money because there'd be a fare war, and the prices would
Right.
go down to a point where we couldn't make any money off of it. And so when we heard the rumors about them coming into the market was when we hired an investment banking firm to say, okay, let's talk to them about selling. And when we entertained offers from other businesses as well, but the most logical purchaser was Alaska Airlines. But we had to have the mindset to be
Mm-hmm.
willing to let it go. And I know of other businesses that I've been close to where there was not the willingness, the times were changing, the world was changing around them, and they were just dead set on keeping it the same way. And the world passed them by and they
And you
lost
end up
their
losing.
opportunity. They lost everything. They didn't sell. They ended up in bankruptcy.
Oh my
So you have a
goodness.
choice.
Yeah, it sounds like you always have a choice. It sounds like you always have a choice. One of the
Absolutely.
things, Ral, when you and I initially spoke before, we got to the podcast part of it, one of the things that you said to me that really just like stuck out to me was that CEOs or the leaders, the owners of these entrepreneurial, companies don't prioritize themselves.
Correct.
And I mean, you don't hear about that. You don't see that. Mostly you see hustle, 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 grind, grind, grind. That's the only way you can make it. But you are saying you have to prioritize yourself. Why is that so important?
Uh, well, because there's only one of you, and if you burn yourself out, then you're no good. So
True. That part is true.
yeah, you health issues. I mean, let's talk about health. If you don't have your health, you can have all the wealth in the world, but there are
Mhm.
sayings about if you don't have your health, then what good does all
Right.
that wealth do you? So I think you have to take care of your body. It's a machine. It needs to
Mhm.
be maintained and fed and exercised, and you have to take care of the temple that you are.
Yes.
And that goes for your emotional health as well. So if you're under too much stress, which of course can affect your physical health, high
Mhm.
blood pressure and strokes and all kinds of things. In our case, I was headed towards a not healthy future. I was
Mhm.
overweight. I didn't exercise. I ate poorly. We ate fast food way too often because I was too busy to cook. And at some point, I just went, "Oh, this is not right. I mean, look at what our daughter is eating, and just look at what we're eating. This can't go on." And so it took a concentrated effort to make sure that we could focus on ourselves and take the time to go to the gym. And I tell you that, but I hate going to the gym. I absolutely hate it. Ask my trainer. But
I'm loving you on this podcast. I
uh,
am.
but I do it. I go to the gym, damn it, because I need to. And
Mhm.
I'm getting older. I'm I'm the only one that is, but anyway, um, I need to make sure that I stay strong and healthy and vibrant. I've got little grandchildren now and more coming
Mhm.
with the daughter that just got married. I'm sure they're going to, produce a couple. And I want to be able to play with them and to keep up with them. So I need to stay fit and strong. So I'm prioritizing going to the gym and doing the damn weightlifting and all the stuff that just, hurts. And
Right.
it's a real pain. I'd much rather watch a show on TV than be at the gym, but that's
Yes.
not going to do anything for my body. So, I have to do it. And you need to take care of yourself, and you need to give yourself the mental breaks as well as,
Mhm.
get your body out there and move your body in whatever way. Maybe it's not going to the gym for you. Maybe you'd rather ride bikes or go swimming or, whatever it is, play pickleball, whatever it is that you decide to do to keep
Right.
your body moving. It doesn't matter as long as you're moving it. Um, and then give yourself the mental breaks. Whether you want to meditate or just read a book or just take a walk in nature or whatever it is that fills you back up emotionally and spiritually, make sure that you do that, because you
Mhm.
you have to have something left to give. Otherwise, you're not going to be any good to your business. But before we leave this, I have to say
Uh-huh.
that the trick is to step back and start working on your business instead of in it.
I hear
So,
that so much. What is the difference? Please explain that to me and
mm,
my community.
okay. Well, working on your business means that you're like the orchestra leader.
Okay.
You're not playing the instruments. You're not in there doing the tasks, producing, the product. You
Mm-hmm.
are orchestrating all the team members that are doing that. And then you're stepping back and saying, okay, where do we need some greater efficiencies? Looking at, everything that's happening here. And okay, there seems to be a little cog, that's missing a beat over here. What can we do to oil that up and make that running more smoothly? And, what other products are needed by our customers? Making sure that you're gathering the data from your customers to find out, are they satisfied? Are they delighted? What else do they need? How else can we serve them? These are the things that you can do to work on your business. Looking towards the future of the company. What's the next step? Do you need another location? Do you expand to another market? Do you create a product that can fulfill a similar need, for your same customers? You provide another product that they will also like. So now you've just grown your business. So that's how you grow your business, by stepping back and being able to look at it. Take that 10,000-foot level view of your
Mm-hmm.
business. If you're in it, you're in the weeds, all you can see is the tree trunks. You have to step back. And that's how you work on your business. And part of working on your business is taking that time to sit back
Mm-hmm.
and allow your creativity to grow. If you don't give yourself some time off to recharge, your creativity is going to dry up,
Yes.
And so whether it's sitting in a sauna or sitting on a beach or whatever it is that you want to do to give yourself a little time and space to think, do it.
What about, and I'd like your personal experience on this. What about people who feel like I need to pause this business. I need to stop this business for my mental health, to
Mm.
preserve my peace and all of the things that you were just talking about. Is that something that is what's the word I'm looking for? Is that something that is smart, to pause the business, to stop the business, and then later on come back to it? And have
Um,
you ever had to do something like that?
no, I haven't. I have stopped businesses
Okay.
and just stopped doing them. I didn't sell them. I just stopped them, um, because they either weren't working or they weren't what I wanted.
Hmm.
So I think stopping something that's not working for you is definitely important. Um, Whether or not you can come back to it later, that's a good question, because that
Hmm.
depends on, will the same customers be there, or are you going to have to start over again? But I think the easiest answer, well, there's two answers. One is that if whatever your business is,
Hmm.
if it's not fueling you, if it's not feeding your passion, if you don't really love it, and it doesn't align with your visions and your goals for your life, then don't do it. Get out of it. It's not worth it. You have to have alignment with who you are. That comes first, and then you create the business from that. And I think that that's a mistake that too many entrepreneurs make. They just get this great idea, and I can make a lot of money doing XYZ, and they start doing it, and they realize, I hate this business. I didn't want to ever do that, but I'm making good money at it, so I'm stuck. Like, oh,
Right.
what a
How
mistake!
does someone know? And
Get
I
out
feel
of
like I
it.
probably should have asked this question at the beginning of the podcast instead of at the end of the podcast, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How does someone know if they should be an entrepreneur or stay at a traditional job? Because there's absolutely nothing
Hmm.
wrong with having a traditional job. I mean, they're wonderful, they're
Right.
amazing, they're stable.
Right. And gosh, there's so many ways that you can invent yourself within a company structure. And
Yes.
there's a term that I learned recently about becoming an intrapreneur. And that's someone who's, entrepreneurial like, but they're still inside a company and they still probably have a W-2, but
Mm-hmm.
they're an intrapreneur and they can be creative and they can have a lot of autonomy depending on the company that they're in. And there again, if you're in a job that doesn't fill you up and doesn't, feed your passions, God, get out of it. Do something that does. You only have this one life.
True.
And for God's sakes, make it something that you really enjoy. And there's just no excuse for being miserable. That's your own fault if you're miserable with what you're doing. So find something that you can love and find a way to make a living at it. And if you're in a business and you own the business and
Mm-hmm.
it's not serving you anymore, you could look at selling it. You could look at working on it and passing most of the workload onto someone else, get your team to step up and run the business so that you can take some time off. That can
Mm-hmm.
give you a lot of freedom. So you maybe don't have to stop the business, but just kind of step away and let your team run it. And that could work, or just stop it. You don't have to file bankruptcy in order to stop a business. You can just close,
You
you
could just
know.
close it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, my final question for you, you have been in this entrepreneur space for years at this point, over 44 years owning your own business. You sold it to a huge company, a huge corporation, and now you're in the coaching space. What is your intention in this space?
Mm. Thank you for asking. My passion is to teach thousands of entrepreneurs how to be the owner of their business versus the operator so that they can have the freedom to enjoy the life that they want on their terms. That's my passion. And I just
Ah,
want to reach as many people as possible because I think that, the more people are fulfilled and happy with their lives, the better off our planet is. So it's really a bigger vision than just me and just a few thousand entrepreneurs. It's really helping millions of people around the globe to have business owners that are happy and fulfilled. And think about how much better it is to work in a business that's run by an owner that is happy
yes.
and fulfilled and
Yes.
following their passion. Think about the empowerment and enlightenment and fulfillment that all the team members can have as a result.
Yes.
Because the way I teach people how to run your business is it's a trickle down, because you follow your passions, you follow your values and your principles, you put them into your business, and that it empowers and embeds that in your team, and then that carries on to the customers, and then they become happier, and more happiness just makes the world a better place, doesn't it?
That's the truth. That is the absolute truth. Yes.
So
I
it's a,
love
it's a
that.
it's a small mission, but I'm willing to take it on.
Yes. Just a tiny, tiny mission that you alone can do by yourself. That
No, I
doesn't
want I want
sound
to I want to
good.
create an army of people that are going to do it. Once I teach them how, they can do it over and over and over.
Your ego is not your amigo, as your
There you go.
yes,
Remember that.
yes. Your ego is not your amigo. It rhymes. You have to remember it. You have to
Yeah.
remember it.
Yeah. And that's part of the thing is that, some people say, oh, I don't want to teach this because, then they'll know what I know. Like, no, share it, get it out
Share
there.
it. Yes.
It doesn't have to belong to me. It's a
Mhm.
thought, it's an idea. And the more we put it out there, the more it can grow and the more improvements can be made on it, because I don't have all the answers. I put something out there, somebody else might take it and do something even more brilliant with it. Why
Yes.
not?
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on this podcast and educating me and educating my community. We all say thank you. We all say thank you.
You're welcome. It's been fun, Crystal.
Excellent, excellent. To my community, thank you so much for tuning in and watching. You can get Ral's podcast on YouTube Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.